Hello, you are listening to the Gamer Librarian Podcast, the best podcast you can find on this side of the multiverse. I am your host, Adrian, and today I will be talking about the Elder Scrolls Online, the new movie, Weapons, and more. Afterwards, be sure to subscribe to be notified when future episodes are released, and show your support by liking and leaving a comment. Thank you for joining. All right, we are back. Thank you for joining me on another Monday afternoon. It looks really nice out, but it is too hot. It is too hot. Like if I went out there, my Game Boy would melt. My brand new Switch 2 would melt if I tried to go outside and use that. So instead, we stay indoors playing video games. And before we get back into any kind of games that I've been talking about, because that's all we do here is just talk about what I do, right? There's quite a lot of video game news that has come out. Now, I think we may have talked about it before, but I throw shade at BioWare any chance I get. And there's some articles. There's some articles that, and apparently a video where a former BioWare executive has talked about what went down with Anthem during its conception and its entire creation and then its launch. So I think it's pretty crazy that we're still discussing it. I mean, this company just needs to be put down. It just needs to just stop. I mean, we can all this talk with people from before the old talent, and you know what, that's great that the old talent is talking about you know a long time ago that once was, but I think it's over. I think the era of BioWare games, I think that era of RPGs where they had meaningful, impacted stories across iterations, installments in their franchise, I think that's over. Like, I don't think we could ever get that back because you can't bank on that sequel anymore or anything like that. And I've always said it before that like a lot of these games, they never expect a sequel. And they always just kind of snowball into something larger for a decent amount of it, right? That's just why I always think like something like Halo, Gears of War, you know, any kind of original game, Mass Effect 1, Dragon Age 1 to some degree never expected a sequel. And it's when those sequels come into play that sometimes things get muddied. Original gameplay might get changed, original story might be changed, and Mass Effect is obviously has like a legendary edition, and that's a cohesive story from 1 to 3, which is sick, super super awesome. Dragon Age isn't like that. You're playing as three different characters across three different games, and a lot of the choices are vastly different, and not even vastly different, don't even matter. So there's not even really a reason to have like any kind of remasters or anything like that. So I think in the time where we have remasters and ports and things. I think that's all well and great, but I just think that like the era of having those quality games is completely done. So unless someone else can do it, obviously there's a lot of great talent out there that can really muster up and put out a great game, regardless of funds and stuff and all that. But right, I just like talking about Dragon Age and BioWare and all that stuff because it's just sad seeing that we're still talking about it this day and age. But Nintendo. Nintendo had a small indie release, and we've been kind of getting blue balled on Hollow Knight forever. Now, apparently, Hollow Knight's going to be at Gamescom, which is going to be awesome. We've covered Gamescom a little bit, and there's usually like two Gamescoms. There's like I think maybe it's just one Gamescom just in Germany, but Gamescom comes around, and there's usually a lot of titles that we've already seen, already heard about, and not a lot of real announcements. I could be wrong. We've talked about them for a long time, but it's one of those amalgamation ones where it's like, will we see games we've seen before? Absolutely. Will we see new games? Maybe. It's not like a game of the year type deal where we're going to see like new kind of games usually, mostly, and then the E3 kind of stuff is we're going to see stuff from a year or two before, sadly maybe games from far before, and then we might get a new title. But for Gamescom, it's pretty nice, and it seems that we're going to be also having a live performance for the producer and the makers of the Expedition 33 soundtrack, which is awesome. This is like one of the first times I ever looked forward to listening to the full set of live performance music for a game event. Like I think it's gonna be awesome. So Gamescom is something that I'm looking forward to, and just seeing what kind of returning games are there, especially Hollow Knight. Hollow Knight is a returning game, Silk Song specifically. So we saw gameplay for that in like 2020. I think it was 2020. It's like right there. It's not 2019. It's like 2021. Like right around there, we saw gameplay for it. At least you know, um, Silk. I think the player character is Silk, and she's pretty cool. But I've always said that what's probably keeping that game from coming along is most likely co-op. I think it's co-op. I've been, really trying to say that for a while, and I think that's why it's really taking so long. More so that it's like they already saw gameplay way back then, so conceptually they have a really good idea, and with the levels and stuff, that also seemed like they were relatively done. But obviously testing and end game stuff and porting and all that stuff takes a very long time. But I'd like to think that after a decent bit, they probably had a few more. I don't know if Team Cherry is still 3 people, right? Whenever you go to the website, they still talk about their 3 people, but maybe they're waiting for like a big, big return and being like, we're a team of like 34 people, right? This, little expedition jab right there. That's still cool. It's still cool to see that talent come back. So we could talk about Silk Song forever, but that's probably the most coveted thing. And there was, obviously stir up and talk of it coming to be shown at a Nintendo indie event. I thought actually that actually makes sense, like a surprise drop of like the one of the most anticipated games ever in terms of like an indie return, right next to, in my opinion, I think it's probably up there with GTA 6 in terms of like video gamer expectation or hype, just generic gamer hype. That's just for me, right? It's like those two games. Those are probably like the two pinnacle games. Like those games came out this year. It's Expedition 33 and those two games probably game of the year, like just the top three contenders if it was this year. But Nintendo had the little thing. Hollow Knight devs, Yacht Club Games is putting out Mina the Hollower, and it seems to be like a more 3D adventure type game rather than their platform like with Shovel Knight, which was pretty cool. This one features a mouse, and it comes out October 31st. I'm pretty hype. Might be a launch day game. And there's some other small titles like Neverway, and then we have like Herdling. There was a Katamari game that they announced, which seems pretty cool, like a full-on sequel. And then there's Is the Seat Taken? Seems like actually really fun puzzle game. That was actually pretty exciting to watch. Another cat game, the big city cat game. That one seemed pretty cool. And then the ball pit seemed awesome, like a Enter the Gungeon type bullet hell type game. It looked really really cool. Certainly could be on the phone. And then there's like the ultimate sheep raccoon uh game. There's like the underwater game that seemed really really interesting. I don't know, Glacier I think it's called. So that is definitely a cool uh showcase that they had, and that's probably the last time we're going to see Nintendo until right. We're gonna have Pokemon, I think, this year. Who knows when that's gonna be? Whenever they'll probably have something around Gamescom maybe, or like right before um, what's it? Game of the Year, like the December era stuff. I don't really know what Nintendo's schedule is. It's just hard to say. I feel like Nintendo's kind of dropping the ball on their mainline titles here on their console, but it is what it is. Yeah. So the Indie Showcase, that was cool. A game that did seem to be popping off recently is the Battlefield 6 beta. I didn't get a chance to play it, but that does seem extremely fun. I would really enjoy to try and play that game. I'm not necessarily a big Battlefield fan. I actually really enjoyed Hardline. I thought Hardline was the last really good Battlefield game, and then obviously everything before that was relatively decent. Uh, Company 2 and then Battlefield 3, those are like the pinnacle ones. 4 was really good. 4 was also really good. It's just if they can keep up the momentum, make people stay, not add in things that feel like it's gonna distort the kind of escape experience that people go for in these shooter type games, these militarized games. They could probably have a really good time. But it can't be a Call of Duty Battle Royale, something like that. Like that might be that might be a real turn off for of a lot of people. And yeah, you know, if you want to try and get the younger crowd, then you know what, you got to make the game fulfilling in a way. You can't just start putting Rick and Morty skins. You can't start putting in Warhammer skins, things like that, man. It's just not every game needs to be having that kind of multiverses, Space Jam type vibe. It's like everything's trying to be Smash Bros nowadays. It's just like, damn, at least Smash Bros just sticks to video game characters, right? Like that's at least cool. You know, people be like, "Oh, we want, you know, Goku for Smash." It's just like, what the fuck? No, no, no. Yeah, the video game news. That's pretty much basically it, right? We're not in that area. Gamescom's gonna be a good time. Now, I have been pretty interested in getting into vinyls lately, so I'm gonna try and get some vinyls of Expedition 33. I think the Uzumaki one is really good, Fallout and Persona, and they're all on like the IGN website. So that might be like a cool gift for myself. And we're gonna be gearing up for our 100th episode soon, which is crazy. And then, you know, soon we'll be moving into another apartment, might have a bigger space, and we could have a bigger setup for the podcast, which might be cool. But until then, we're going to be trying to live stream for the first time on episode 100. I think that's going to be cool. And I just hope to see you guys there with me every Monday, as always. Other than that, right? Things that I've been doing, it's been pretty crazy, right? We're in a pretty dry spell with gaming, right? It's, you know, I got a full time job. It is what it is. But I try to play tabletop games with my friends, which is pretty cool, right? We do a lot of stuff. We just finished a JoJo's Bizarre Adventure campaign, which is sick. That was awesome. Centered in 1980s South America. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Very season three type vibes, which was sick. Um, you know, we've done Call of Cthulhu a lot, D&D, obviously, and then Alien RPG was really fun. One that we're still doing currently, and it's our longest campaign that we've done as a group. Longest campaign, the Elder Scrolls tabletop game. You know, obviously taken for just D&D and then stylized with Elder Scrolls flair, which is pretty cool, right? An official one I always thought was going to come by the guys who made the Fallout one. Shout out to Modifius. I think it's Modifius. It starts with an M. They did the Fallout one. We'd also done a Fallout campaign. I ran that one. Awesome. And you know, my first character was a Khajiit named Judato. This character died. You know, Papa talked about it a few months ago when it happened, and then we made a new character. This character is a orc that is a blacksmith. Super cool. Super cool. And we're still going. Longest campaign. We have a group name that is called the Pine Bearers. That's technically what we've called ourselves as like a party group. We travel to a good portion of Tamriel. I think we're as we just enter Morrowind, we're about to do that. We all have to do just the Somerset Isles, and then we should be everywhere. We should have gone to every single place, which will be insane, truly, in every like aspect of it. Long campaign, done by Matt, sick, cool guy. It's amazing. I'm loving it. We since JoJo ended, we're trying to find what else to do, other games. I personally want to do Dune or Batman, right? I got Dune in the Batman book, just like sit. Audio did cut out there for a minute, but I do have the Dune and Batman tabletop books just sitting there. Wanted to try and do that, but we're going to be taking the Pine Bearers to the Elder Scrolls Online game. And, you know, I'm pretty excited. We're getting some new friends into the Elder Scrolls Online scape. These are people who just play the single player game. And I think the Elder Scrolls Online is one of the coolest, like MMOs, just specifically out there because it takes a formula from a previous game. And I think it nailed it in terms of making it pretty adjustable for people who've only played Oblivion, Skyrim, and then obviously like Morrowind is like the earliest one and the new Oblivion, I think, is probably a little too polished. Like, I think people will go back to new Oblivion and be like, "Oh, this is so different." And the MMO style is obviously a big turnoff for a lot of people, but I think that you have to meet MMOs with like expectations of certain values, right? Me personally, I'm not a big PvP guy, so like you don't have to do the PvP stuff. Now, I think that if you're just gonna obviously get into it, you should maybe at least try it. That's obviously get your foot in the door, see what you can. If you like multiplayer games, if you like competitive games, if you like games where you verse other people, like it's still something there. I think that games like this offer some really good value in terms of that. But specifically, Elder Scrolls still offers that kind of explorational uh, own single storytelling that you get with the Elder Scrolls original games. I think it's great. I don't necessarily think that you get that with games like World of Warcraft. I think it's far too, specifically daunting, and the world doesn't have that kind of introductory gap that I think a lot of like games like the Elder Scrolls does, or even like Fallout, not Fallout, Final Fantasy to a degree, where like there's things that already existed to adjust to people to those games. Now obviously there's things like Warcraft 3 back then earlier, but nowadays I don't think it's the same thing. Warcraft is like really big, but then Elder Scrolls, we're not talking about that. I think that this is just a really good and special edition of the Elder Scrolls series, and I never think that it's gonna. I think that's gonna be the reason that Elder Scrolls 6 doesn't succeed, and my reason is that you can have a game where you finally play and experience every zone in like Tamriel, which is awesome in its own limited kind of world hub way, which is really cool. You're not like changing anything, the zones don't change. You're not like seeing big world changing features, which I think is going to be something that we're going to see in the new Elder Scrolls. I think we're going to have maybe some kind of cool weather effects that change as you play the game, or maybe your gameplay is what changes the weather effects. I always thought that would be a really cool idea. Um, Now, I think that also Elder Scrolls Online offers a really good perspective of the job classes, because with the jobs you kind of find a necessity to do these jobs for not just yourself but the in-game economy or the in-game experience. I always think that like you shouldn't look at it like, oh, I'm gonna go and do these like blacksmithing upgrades or be a cook or a tailor or fishing or whatever and just grind out all these and capture a bunch and then sell it for gold, right? You could do that, but I always like to think of it as like, okay, I could just make these and then either ask people if they're waiting for it, or while I'm making other stuff, be like, what do you guys want? And make extra money like on the side, and just be like, I'm already grinding out these certain things. I could just get these as well and just, make more money and help out new players, help out new guilds, pop into new guilds. Like I always enjoy when I get back into an MMO, and it's just joining a new guild, helping that guild kind of thrive and live, which is really really cool. That's the kind of experience that I like going through for Elder Scrolls, and I think that bringing the Pine Bearers is going to happen. So we have the Pine Bearers Guild. Apparently, we need 10 members to get like the guild bank. So I think we're searchable on the website or whatever. You can just pop in, join, or not. I'll make it like public if I haven't already. But really, really excited. Um, the Elder Scrolls is a really cool MMO, and when you look back at it, I think that now with like perspective of the Oblivion remaster and just how I don't know, it feels basic because in my opinion, I feel like if you were gonna remaster an Elder Scrolls game, I would try to remaster it and make it at least somewhat nuanced to the way that you want the new game to be, at least in some degree. Obviously, you could just polish it, or you could just do that. But like a full remake, I feel like a full remake would have just been better because Elder Scrolls Skyrim is an 11-year-old game, and I think that games with a mod community, I think that games with a modly livelihood is what hold the sequels back. It's what holds sequels back in terms of them really flourishing. And Bethesda's like the biggest like example of this. I think once they added the mod stores to the consoles, then they really opened the doors for why would we even bother with a sequel when we could just have the community make our game flourish and just expand. And then I think, okay, if they're not going to bother with a sequel that's really good, why not make an MMO? And they made the MMO, and that also has mods. The Elder Scrolls Online has mods, and to me, that is just what's making these games stale. And I want to see a progression in these games. I think an Elder Scrolls 6 should have some new encompassing, like innovative gameplay style, gameplay mechanics, just something that would make it worthy of calling it a sequel, giving it the title of 6 in nowadays era of 2025. I think that like, abilities that change the weather on command, like around you, or like you pull like meteors out of like the sky, or you see crumbling like buildings, you see like large scale battles, we see like dynamic HUDs to a degree or something, or clothing or whatever, right? Graphics. I don't necessarily have graphics, but I always wanted things like the alternative start to an Elder Scrolls game. I always wanted that. And you can just get them. You can just download those in Oblivion mods, Skyrim mods, and you can start out as like a hunter. You can start out as a Dark Brotherhood character. It's, in my opinion, like that is something that if it's not in Elder Scrolls 6, it'll probably hold me back from buying it. Let's like inherently. We know it's being made. I don't think it's gonna be good, right? They saw that like Starfield, and then right remaster of Oblivion is fine, but I don't think that 6 is just gonna be the kind of game that we're looking for. That's gonna be that open world, ever changing like experience that you kind of got with Skyrim. But I think it should be something with like in terms of like a Bioware stitch, right? Where you have choices that really affect the world. I don't know. I think the choices you make in Skyrim, the last newest game of Elder Scrolls, is not there, right? You don't really affect the war. I feel like maybe having like some really cool war table thing, because you have mods with that where you can affect the war as you go, and there's like big battles. That was always something cool, but just dragons flying in is awesome. Anyway, I could talk about Elder Scrolls forever, but we are getting the Pine Bearers up on the Elder Scrolls online game. And besides that, I'll probably be doing Metal Gear Solid 2 and Wildwood Down. Uh, Eventually, we're going to try and doing that. And apparently, we're going to be Katamari. Hannah's been getting into Katamari. She seems really keen on playing that. Now, we do get a roundup here. So, just want to say South Park is killing it. Their latest episode that came out last Wednesday, right, was awesome. Hoping we get another video game style episode. I don't know. Obviously, there's more topical, real things in the world here, but there was the World of Warcraft episode, and then there was the Black Friday Xbox PS5 shit. Just funny, goofy, right? I still think that it should be pretty fun. Maybe we'll get an episode on like the Visa bank card nonsense with video games. Now, we're gonna end on something awesome, something that I can't recommend any higher, only because it has Julia Garner in it. I mean, this woman was in Ozark. Ozark was the reason I kept watching that show. I started it for Jason Bateman. I kept watching it for Julia Garner because her performance in it was awesome. And the trailer for Weapons was really cool, but it was Julia Garner that really like was like, all right, I'll see you in theaters. Yeah, right. Like Julia Garner was like, I'll buy the ticket. Absolutely. Weapons was phenomenal. I mean, I haven't watched an entertaining thrilling horror movie like that in forever. I think like Smile 2 probably comes next to it, or maybe like The Substance, right? The relatively newish, but those ones I think are really good. And Weapons is right up there. I put Weapons up there with Brightburn. Brightburn is like awesome. The alternate Superman type story. Weapons is right up there. And the whole time, you're being spoon fed the story. Like it's slowly drip fed to you because you never see what's going on until the very end. Like you never even see the villain until really like the middle. And yeah, I just can't give this movie any more like regard. It's just awesome. Um Amazing. Truly amazing. Like if this was a video game, very like Dead by Daylight ish in a way, kinda. I don't know. It was really, really awesome. And I think that it was very entertaining. I would love to see like this as a sequel or something like that. I think it was really, really cool. and I think it has a good premise to be a sequel. I think it really does, because it's really vague in its titling, right? I think we could talk about the title a little bit. It's called Weapons, and I think the idea of it being called Weapons is just literally like we'll use anything and everything to hurt like anyone else. That's what we'll do as human beings. That's what we'll do because you don't even get I mean, like, we're gonna get into like real spoilers, right? Because now like we're in the end of it. But I think this would be a really good sequel. Like Smile, I think deserves a sequel. I want a sequel for Smile 2. I want a Smile 3. Um, this could be an awesome premise because I think that there's some vagueness into the motives of the villain and like kind of what really is. I think the idea was that this person uses other people to um live longer, right? In a kind of like succubus kind of like way, like you take the life of someone and you live longer type deal. That's kind of what I was thinking about it. But then I'm like, it had a really decent setup for the villain to have like this plan really work out. And then some things about it kind of really change how you feel about it, like how the story goes. Because then, like, so someone has a dream in it, and then you're like, oh, okay, people have dreams, and this story's being told. Like, I thought someone was invading this character's dream when it was happening. I was like, oh, they're being told this is happening because of some dream, but it's very weird why that happens. And then we have another character like see the villain, but the reason why they see the villain isn't really uh like it's weird how that happens in terms of the story. They still I won't really want to spoil it like that much. I think you should just go watch it. But it was phenomenal. It was one of the ones where it's like you know the premise of it. It told it in the story and in the trailer. You told the premise of the story in the trailer, and when you're retold it in the very beginning of the movie, because it just kind of really quickly tells you it again, it brings you right into it, and it's a very slow, methodical type thrill ride, which was awesome. That's really all I could say. Like to it. It was absolutely really great. I want the director's cut of it. I want to see the director's commentary of it. I want to see like because there's one scene I will say there is one very specific scene that really sticks out in my mind about it, and it's during that dream scene, and somebody sees one of their kids run into like a house, and I don't know what to think about that because when the character is looking at the kid run into the house, we see a scene of the camera like pan above the house, and then there's a gun like floating with I think like the time that the kids like moved or like disappeared. That's as much as I'm gonna really spoil, but it was that scene that I was like, it's such an odd scene to have here because I in my opinion, I think that obviously it's like a euphemism. It's called weapons. The villain doesn't use guns as a weapon, um, but in this one scene, there's just this big like M16 assault rifle just floating, and I don't know what to think about that. That was a very odd scene. Anyway, this is literally episode 97 of the Game Librarian podcast. We are three away from episode 100. If you're here still to the end of this episode, I want you to like and subscribe, and put in the comments if there's anything you want me to read or play before we get to the episode 100, or topics you want me to talk about. Episode 100, I think, is going to be a more broad type scene for us. We're going to be trying to have a little time to talk about a lot of things. We're on a big, big world, so I'm going to talk about it. Anyway, peace.